Hello everyone, my name is Danielle and welcome to my channel. This is my first ever video, and as you can see by the title, I'm going to be talking about why I withdrew from medical school. I've been wanting to make this video for a very, very long time, months, but fear has been stopping me. But I feel spirit telling me to be brave and tell my story. So I decided to make this my first video on my channel called Healing Her Sacred Light, because I wanted to share a little bit about my background, my story, and how I got here. So let's go ahead and just dive in. So at the time of withdrawal, I was enrolled in an accredited U.S. medical school. I was a third-year medical student. And the reason I went to medical school is because I wanted to be a leader in medicine. In college, I learned that leaders have empathy, integrity. They work well in teams. They ignite change. And so I wanted to be that leader. I knew that a lot of doctors were often dismissive towards their patients or didn't show compassion and didn't actively listen to their patients, right? So I wanted to be that good doctor, the one that really cared, the one that doesn't discriminate, the one that didn't discriminate against anyone, no matter what color, religion, culture, whatever, your identity, doesn't matter, right? Treat everyone with dignity and respect. So that, in combination with my love for science, of course, I love human biology, molecular biology. So those are the two reasons why I decided that medicine was best for me. I wanted to really help my patients heal. Just to give a little educational background, I got a Bachelor of Science in molecular and cellular biology. I minored in Latin. I took Latin in high school. I went to a private Catholic high school, so I chose to study Latin because I knew I wanted to be a doctor. So I chose Latin. And then when I got to college, I didn't want to forget it. So I minored in it. Then I also got a certificate in microbiology. After college, I went on to get a master's degree in medical sciences. And then it was actually a program designed to help students get into medical school. So after my master's program, I actually taught at 2 universities for a year. I taught human anatomy and physiology for 1 semester at 1 university, and then I taught Gen Bio Lab at another university for 2 semesters. And then, so then I started medical school. The first 2 years of medical school were actually great. It was like college on steroids, except it was all focused on biology, basically, human biology. So it was wonderful. I loved learning how to diagnose. I loved learning how to understand the human body and apply it to solve the puzzle, apply it while you're trying to figure out what's wrong with the patient. I loved working with standardized patients, practice patients. It was fun. So then it's like, well, what changed? Well, in my after my second year of medical school, my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 uterine cancer. And it was my mother's journey with cancer that opened my eyes to the sad realities of modern medicine. And that brings me to my first point, is that unfortunately, I realized that modern medicine is a business. And I say this because I came to this realization because chemo I don't believe in chemo. And I want to say that all of these, everything I talk about in this video, these are my personal opinions. So I don't believe in chemotherapy. I call it a chemotoxin. I don't think that it's worth the risks. I don't think it's worth the devastation and destruction that it imposes on your body. I'm not going to go into the science of chemo, but what I will say is chemo ravages your body. It destroys your red blood cells, rendering you anemic. It destroys your immune cells, making you immunocompromised. Our immune cells are known to actually fight cancer cells. So it's interesting that the chemo destroys your immune cells, meaning it messes up your body's natural ability to fight the cancer. Do you see? It's just, it really doesn't make sense to me. It destroys your platelet cells, making you more prone to bleeds. It destroys your hair cells, your skin cells. It destroys the cells of your gut, causing nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. And persistent vomiting and diarrhea can lead to significant electrolyte abnormalities, which could lead to cellular dysfunction. On top of that, chemo induces a massive inflammatory response. So whenever you have a massive inflammatory response or any inflammatory response that's unchecked, it forms free radicals, and the free radicals basically go on and can damage your cells. So chemo also can damage your heart, your liver, your brain cells. Have you ever heard of chemo brain? So when you take all of these things into consideration, one must ask themselves, is it actually worth it? As expensive as chemo is it worth the destruction that it does to your body? It destroys your quality of life. And for what? Does it work? I asked her oncologist and her healthcare team many questions, like, is this working? Like, don't tumors exhibit chemo resistance? Meaning, so for solid tumors, they often exhibit something called tumor resistance, or chemo resistance, which mean they're quite literally resistant to the drug. So while your body is being destroyed, the tumor oftentimes is not being affected, right? And I'm not going to go into the science of that, but just know that tumors can develop mechanisms that allow them to become resistant to the chemo. And that's why chemo success rates oftentimes are so low. When I asked her healthcare team how likely it was to work, they were like, no, we don't know. Every patient's different. And I think that was unacceptable and an inappropriate response, considering my mom's life is on the line. I tried to find statistics for the particular combination of drugs she was in, and I remember it said that patients on this combination of drugs, 20 to 30% of patients saw a tumor response. So with all the damage it does, there's a 70 to 80% chance that this tumor won't respond to the drug. Not only is it not going to respond to the drug, even if it did, what is a tumor response? Shrinking by a millimeter? You know what I mean? Like, that's not eradicating the tumor. It's just, it just responded just a little bit. That's not successful. That's not a good thing. That's nothing, especially considering how damaging the chemo is. So anyways, I'm not a fan of chemotoxin. It is absolute poison, my personal opinion. Personally, I would never get it. So that's just my personal opinion. I do not think it's worth it. I think it destroys your quality of life. Like I said, that is my opinion. You can go ahead and listen to your doctors, the professionals. Okay. I, of course, decided, I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to look into other ways to help heal cancer. And so then when I did, a whole world opened before my eyes, a whole world that is based off of the healing power of nature, a world I'd never been exposed to before, because I was being trained in allopathic medicine. And unfortunately, when you bring up other natural healing modalities, right, oftentimes these practices are referred to as quackery, and those who practice it are referred to as quacks. And I do want to make a point. I'm fully aware that there are a lot of MDs that do support integrative medicine, holistic healthcare. I know that they are out there. And I know that there are residency programs where they do have a big focus on integrative medicine. I know that there are conferences out there focused on integrative medicine. Unfortunately, the hospital I was at, I didn't meet any that did support holistic medicine. At least they weren't talking about it with patients, so that was unfortunate. And that made my medical school journey a bit more difficult because that's what I believe in. And it's hard to work with people who don't believe in that. So I don't want to prescribe drugs. So if I don't want to prescribe drugs to people, what's the point of finishing medical school? And I know that there are naturopathic medical schools. Why would I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn something that my ancestors already knew? So it's like it's almost shamed and shunned in the allopathic medicine community, right? It's like they are so big on pushing man-made drugs with toxic side effects and these surgeries that leave lasting impacts on your body over natural healing therapies. And when I say natural healing therapies, I mean stuff like herbal medicine, energy healing, acupuncture, massage therapy. I mean, anything that is basically focused on working with the body's natural healing mechanisms, right? So, or just like boosting the body's own ability to heal, right? It's like all these things basically help your own body fight and do what it's designed to do, right? So the chemo, on the other hand, destroys your body's ability to fight. Okay. So when I was trying to ask her oncologist, like, especially about the diet, my mom was inpatient for a little bit. And when I looked at the menu, I was very devastated. I was like, why are you feeding cancer patients this trash? And they were like, hey, if they want to, this is a hard battle. And if they want to eat their favorite foods, they should be able to eat their favorite foods. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. I mean, are you trying to heal or no? I remember a few years ago, I watched a video and one doctor said that he was like, oh, if patients eat antioxidant rich foods, that could interfere with the effectiveness of the chemo. And it's like, so you want the patient to just lay there and get poison injected into their system and not eat foods that can heal you and protect from chemo damage. That was one video I saw. It was probably outdated, honestly, but the fact that that was even a thought before, if people really believed that years ago, is crazy. I just kept asking questions. I was very confused. I was like, is this even worth it? Is this going to work? Is this going to work? And basically they said, this is just the way it goes. They didn't really have much else for me. This is just what we do. This is our standard of care. This is how we treat cancer. That's it. So I was like, okay, well, all right. Well, so I decided, well, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. I'm going to try and get my mom on a plant-based diet, get her in nature, let's have talks. Let's talk about childhood trauma. Let's get some herbs in you, The thing is, it was very difficult because her doctors weren't fully on board with it. Basically, it was like my mom was kind of torn. She was like, well, I don't want to mess up anything. Like, I want to trust my doctors. And it's like, I understand. Of course you want to trust your doctors. I get that. So in a way, she was a little resistant to it, So it was very hard trying to convince her, like, no, this is the way. Anyways, so, but she still tried, But the thing is it was difficult, trying to get her on a plant-based diet, especially when chemo damages your taste buds. And then, like I said, it damages your gut cells. So she's constantly throwing up and has persistent diarrhea. It's like, how can I even get nutrition inside of her if the chemo is destroying her ability to even eat and absorb nutrients? And then it was like, how can I take her in nature, right? If she's immunocompromised and we have to be afraid of what could be out there in the air lingering that her immune system might not be able to fight. Or even getting her out of bed. It was hard because the chemo-induced anemia that makes you fatigued when you're anemic. And if you can't get out of bed, it's like, how can you go walk and exercise? So it's like all of these things. It's like chemo literally destroys your body's ability to fight the cancer. That was a uphill battle. It was such a struggle. And if I didn't mention this before, the average cancer patient brings in the hospital $100,000+ per patient. And then chemo is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So follow the money, then it all makes sense. It's like, oh, okay, you guys aren't really trying to heal my mom. You're just following the standard of care and making your money. That's it. So anyways, after a while, my mom said, I want you to get back in school. I want you to go and change the system. You're so passionate about it. Go and be that good doctor that the patients need. So I said, you know what, Mom, you're right. I'm going to get back in school. So I took my step 1 board exam and I started my first rotation, which was OBGYN. And I'm not going to lie. I was like, I'm determined to change the system. I'm about to do this. And as soon as I started at the hospital, all of that kind of went out of the window because I entered into survival mode. Like 3rd year is crazy. And my first rotation, like I said, was OBGYN. And for those who don't know, that stands for obstetrics and gynecology. And my first week the first week was orientation, and I was actually sick that week. Oh, it was terrible. And the second week, which was the actual start of my my rotation, right? It was I was on labor and delivery nights. I was getting 4 hours of sleep a day. It was very crazy. It was intense. And I had been at a school for a little over a year, and so starting with labor and delivery nights was pretty crazy. Like I said, I wasn't thinking about changing the system. I was literally thinking about just trying to survive this rotation. So after my OBGYN rotation, I did go on to do my pediatric rotation. And then after my pediatric rotation, I had a fall break. So I went into my rotations knowing the system is corrupt, right? And honestly, that's enough to leave, right? That's enough to just bounce, be like, I'm not doing this. This is crazy what you guys are doing to people. I'm not going to participate in this. My integrity cannot allow me to participate in this corruption. So, but that doesn't mean the people inside are corrupt, right? So I was hoping that maybe other people saw through the system, that they agreed with me. But unfortunately, I didn't really come across people that agreed with me. And so therefore, what it did is it created this, in a way, hostile environment for me, because it's hard to work amongst people that are not like-minded, right? So people that are complicit to the system, people that just go and do what they're told. I'm not that type of person. I've never been. So what is it like inside the hospital? This brings me to my next point. There's a lot of ego and judgment, and I just couldn't witness it. I didn't want to witness it. I couldn't see myself working in a place every day where people were so egotistical and judgmental. I mean, you have an MD behind your name, and people just think that they are the stuff. And honestly, a lot of people go into medicine for the status, the respect. They want to be respected in society. And I really don't like being around those kinds of people. Ego is like Satan. When you operate from that ego, which means actually I in Latin, it's a place of selfishness, right? It's about self-promotion, feeling like you're better than other people, like you're superior. And when you're driven by your ego, it leads to a lot of destructive things, including your interactions with patients. If you're operating from your ego, you might shut your patient down. Well, I went to medical school. I'm the doctor. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I'm just like, okay, I didn't like being around that type of energy. Not to mention, as a medical student, there's in the hospital, there's a lot of hierarchies, right? It's first is the attending, then the residents, then maybe the 4th year medical student, nurse, or nurse, then 4th year, whatever. But at this 3rd year medical student, you're at the bottom. And they kind of tell you that in a way, indirectly, they're kind of yeah, you're at the bottom of the food chain. And so what that kind of means is, in a way, I'm not saying I wasn't hazed personally, but there are medical students. I was mistreated. I will say that, but I really did stand up for myself a lot. I didn't allow it to go as far as it could have went, right? I stood my ground, but there are a lot of medical students that are mistreated badly. And I guess I kind of was mistreated badly, but that's a story for another day. You know what I'm saying? Like, anyways, well, I mean, I know this video is about why I withdrew from medical school. And anyways, so the point is medical students get mistreated. You know, it's like they're expected to kind of kiss behind to get a good evaluation. You know, just don't ask too many questions. Don't be annoying. Stay out of the way. Smile. Pretend you care, right? And you'll be fine. That's what you got to do. So it's like you have to, in a way, present this contrived version of yourself for the sake of a good evaluation. I'm like, okay, I'm over this. Like, so, and then the judgments. So the other point was the judgments. I saw so much judgment in the hospital towards patients. It was just horrible. So for example, in particular, there was a woman who was under anesthesia. So she was unconscious and she was completely naked on the table in the OR. And she was about to have a procedure done. So anyway, so the leading surgeon basically went over to her body. She was a larger woman and said, look at all this fat. And he like put his hands around her belly and was like, look at all this fat here. Ugh, just is the worst place to have fat. And he's like, you know, it's okay if it's in your hips, thighs, butt, right? But if it's central obesity, it's just the worst. And how horrible, you know, to be that woman and you're so vulnerable. That's like the most vulnerable you could be, completely naked, unconscious in a room full of people that and your body is being shamed. I think that that's absolutely disgusting and says a lot about that person's character. And the fact that he was comfortable enough to do that in front of everybody is like, oh, this must be normal. Like, why would you feel comfortable enough so people don't report people around here? Like, that's crazy to treat a patient like that. That's unacceptable. Remember that Grey's Anatomy episode when Alex Karev was talking about the woman and actually she could hear him? Well, anyways, that stuff is real, you know. Anyways, it's like, oh, don't come in and say you drink. Don't come in and say you smoke, do weed, any of that stuff. You're getting judged. Nurses are going to talk about you. Like, even on my OB rotation, women who didn't get epidurals were judged. It's like, oh, she didn't want an epidural. And speaking of OB, I actually wanted to be an OBGYN. And that's a part of why I created this channel, Healing Her Sacred Light, is because I'm passionate about women's health. But a lot of the practices in the field of OB, I don't agree with, and I don't like how women are treated, especially laboring women. And actually my next video is going to actually be about obstetric violence and birth trauma. So stay tuned for that video. So anyways, yeah, lots of judgment. I just couldn't get behind it. And it's like, please don't act like you are so holier than thou. Like, don't act like you don't have a poison. Don't act like you don't drink. Like, don't act like you don't do, even if you don't drink, don't act like there's something you do. Just don't judge people. Like, that's so messed up. Like, and here's the problem with being judgmental. Besides the fact that it's a poor reflection of your character, a patient is less likely to open up to a judgmental doctor. And in medical school, I learned that over 70% of diagnoses can be made from the patient's history alone, if I recall that correctly. So if that's the case, if a patient can't fully trust you and open up to you because they know or feel that you're going to judge them or shame them, how can you get an accurate diagnosis? You know, it's like you're making it harder for yourself, harder for the patient, and it creates an obstacle in patient care. So anyways, my next point is that patient care was very, it was like robotic and dismissive. It was like on rounds. So rounds in the morning are when you gather with the team in the morning and you check on each patient with your team, with the attending. And I mean, you're really only in there for about 5 minutes. It's like, okay, patient this, patient that. This is the plan. SOAP note, subjective, objective assessment, and the plan. This is the plan. And the plans were either We're going to increase this drug, decrease this drug, take this drug away, add this drug, get them to walk, drink, make sure they're pooping, and let's go on to the next patient. Boring. Oh, and of course, any other labs a patient might need, imaging or scheduling procedures like a surgery. Those are also the things that we talked about, but it was pretty mundane. I mean, it was pretty much the same stuff, the same labs, like the same stuff, like honestly. And I know that I was only a third year student, but so there wasn't much I could actually do, honestly, but like, it was not fun. Like, this is like, it was just the same stuff. It was so boring. And like you don't really spend that much time with patients. Most of the time you're sitting behind a computer typing notes. Like, it was so boring. And I know you have to document things, but it's like, oh my gosh, I wanted to actually interact with patients. I want to get into the biology. I want to discuss the physiology. I want to be a patient educator. Let's talk to the patient. Let's make sure they understand what's going on with their bodies. Let's answer their questions. Let's engage. Let's get engaged. Let's engage them. Sorry, I was kind of stumbling over that, but let's engage the patient. Like, right. Nope. On to the next. Too many patients. We got to see the next patient. On to the next patient. On to the next patient. On to the next patient. Okay, great. And it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be, basically. I was like, oh, okay. So, and honestly, I could really see robots taking over doctors' jobs, because I mean, I could see it, right? Like, robots, that you can eliminate human error. You go in, talk to the robot. The robot will record literally everything you say. Follow the algorithm. That's what we do. Just follow the algorithm. Come to the diagnosis. Dispense the medication at the right dose to the right patient. Yeah, that's all medicine is. There's no human in it, right? So, and speaking of no human, it's like there's no compassion for people. It's just people are treated, and this is another point, it's like the patients were treated like science experiments. And it felt like we were doing more harm than good to the patients. I already talked about chemo. Well, all of these drugs that people are being given, it's like it's not actually healing them. It's masking the symptoms. It's not addressing the root cause, right? It's like if something's wrong with you, the doctor can take away the pain with a pain pill, but that pain is technically, whatever's causing that pain is still there. Like, you have to address it yourself, probably by changing your diet, exercising, getting more in nature, handling your stress, things like that. That's how you really heal yourself, right? So, and I do want to say I get the need for emergency care. You know what I'm saying? Like, if there's emergencies, I get it. Trauma, gunshot wounds, that type of stuff. I see like acute situations where it's like, okay, yeah, someone's bleeding, they need to get, stitched up. But when it comes to handling chronic diseases like cancer, obesity, heart disease, it's like I really don't agree with how the medical system deals with these diseases. So just throw pills at you. And, like I was saying, the patients are treated like science experiments, honestly. And it's like a lot of surgeries in the country. I read a book called Doctors Are More Harmful Than Germs. And the book said that a lot of surgeries in the country that are performed are actually unnecessary. So then why are they doing the surgeries? For the money. And surgeries the surgeries leave scars in your body, and that affects your body's energy flow. And that is going to impact your health, and lead to long-term consequences. You know what I mean? So, and we took an oath in our white coat ceremony to do no harm. And I'm like, I think we're kind of harming people here. I just didn't really feel like, personally, in my opinion, I didn't feel like we were helping people. I remember I was on my internal medicine rotation, and there was a woman, she had ascites, meaning swelling of her belly due to liver cirrhosis. And I had good rapport with her. She liked me. It's not like she didn't like me. And I say that because one day I went in and she said, please leave me alone. And I got it. I understood. I said, absolutely no problem. And I told my attending, I was like, this lady didn't want to be messed with, so I don't have anything for you. Like, I can tell you her labs overnight, but I couldn't get like, I didn't, she couldn't tell me how she was doing because she wanted me to leave her alone. So, and that's the thing about hospitals. When I talk about patients are actually harmed, it's like when you go to the hospital, not only, I mentioned a diet earlier, not only are you fed poor quality hospital food, that's not healing, but you can't even sleep in the hospital. You have so many people, especially at a teaching hospital, people coming in, you have the attending, this resident, that resident, this medical student coming and poking and prodding you. People coming in and out of your room all night. It's just not a place where people get better. It's a very stressful place. So yeah, like I said, that's another point. I just felt like, I was like, I'm not really helping people here. I don't want to disturb people. I was on the pediatric oncology unit and it was so early. It was like 6 a.m. and they wanted me to do a physical exam on a little girl with cancer that was getting chemo. And I didn't want to do it. I'm like, she's sleeping peacefully. And they're like, well, you're going to have to do it because, in the future, we have to check for changes. And it's like, well, guess what? This is real life. I know I'm a medical student and I'm supposed to be training, right? Maybe I should go in the room with you instead of going in the room separately. Like, it's pointless for me to sit up here and play doctor on a real person that's suffering, a child. No, I'm not doing it, So it was like they didn't even care. It's like, oh, you're just another case. Charts and cases. That's all patients were. And I already talked about patient education. It just felt like we weren't adequately educating patients. And it's like if patients had questions, it was like a lot of times it's like some of the residents attendings would get like a little annoyed, like, oh, we got to go. It's like, no, we have to take time to answer their questions. Like we're supposed to be patient educators. Anyways, so another point I want to make about like harming patients is the fear that the medical industry often instills in people. That's basically what drives, in a way, the system. It's like, well, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. Oh, you better get that checkup. Oh, you better do this, or else you better get that surgery. You better get that shot, or else this is going to happen, right? So what that does is, because it causes you to operate from this place of fear, you're easily controlled. Fearful people are people that are easily brainwashed, right? And another thing is that this system will create problems and then claim to be the only ones that can solve those problems that they created. So you cause the damage and then you try and play hero, all while taxing you for it. You see, it's a fearful people are a people that are easily controlled. And I think that that's very harmful. And now on to my next point. The work-life balance. Horrible. First of all, the amount I was literally paying to be in the hospital 12 hours a day. Like, that is, in my opinion, kind of a scam. Like, medical school is way too expensive, and a lot of the learning you do, they say, oh, you really have to do a lot of learning at home. And it's like, what? Because it's like you are really in a hospital. These are real human lives, right? Sometimes you don't always have, there's not always time to answer questions. And I totally get that. But it's like, why am I paying so much money? Like, if I'm doing most of the studying at home, and you do learn at the hospital, like you do, it's just sometimes hard to keep up, right? So you have to really go home and study. But it's like, how can you go home and study if you're so tired because you're at the hospital for 12 hours? It's like there's no room to like be a person outside of medicine in a way. And there are people who are rock stars at it. Honestly, for me, I found it very difficult, especially considering like my mom was still suffering from cancer and I was away from her. Things were very difficult for me. It was very, very hard, So, yeah, doctors are often, and nurses are burned out. They're overworked, they're stressed, and they suffer compassion fatigue because they're seeing so many people. And especially residents, like, they're really overworked. Honestly, like, they're overworked and underpaid for what they do. It's really crazy. It is so corrupt. And then there'll be some residents that express their grievances and frustrations with the system. And then you'll have people criticize them and say things like, stop being so emotional. Get over it. All you do is complain. This is what you signed up for. You're a doctor. You have people's lives in your hands. What did you expect? And it's like, yeah, they have people's lives in their hands. And they're overworked, stressed, burned out, barely have any time to themselves. It's a corrupt system. It's not the person, it's the system. So those people that attack and criticize the residents, truly, I hope you're not in medicine, because that type of attitude, that type of thinking is exactly the problem. The system is corrupt, but people like that in this system, they feed the corruption. And it's from this ego, it's from this egoic place. It's like, truly, these people that say things like that, you should really check your ego, and you should open your heart and have some compassion and understanding. The residents are not treated fairly, and something should change. And if they want to express themselves and vent, they should be allowed to without being criticized or without experiencing backlash. And I do want to say, shout out to those. I worked with a lot of awesome residents. There were some residents that were kind of like stank, just like, kind of, it's like a power trip. Like, they wanted to feel like they had power over you. And it's like, dude, you were just a medical student last year. Chill. You know what I'm saying? But, no, I worked with some really cool people, like, honestly, and shout out to you guys, because man, you made my hospital experience bearable. I swear I wouldn't have gotten through without those cool residents I worked with. And there were some cool attendings too. So I'm not here to bash every single person in the medical field, because there are some really cool people in there. But just as there are a lot of cool people, there are a lot of bad apples too. So, and those people are not fun to work with. So anyways, it's just like that work-life balance. I was like, okay, for all the other points I mentioned, then spending hours in this lifeless, sterile hospital, I'm like, I think this is a little unbearable. And then people will say, oh, once residency is over, your attending, once you become an attending, it's going to be better. And the thing about that, about saying like, well, once you get to residency, it's going to get better. Once you become an attending, it's going to get better. Well, once you open your own private practice, it's going to get better. It's like, no, because tomorrow is not promised. And I believe in the power of now, presence. And if I'm not happy now, then there's a problem. Like, I believe that it's important to work hard, right? And, a certain level of suffering is important, right? Pain helps you grow and learn and get wiser. But there's some suffering where it's like, okay, this is actually counterproductive at this point. Like, I'm not growing, I'm not thriving because the environment is not right. If the environment isn't right, you have to get out of that environment, and you have to find a place where your flowers can truly blossom. So I just wanted to make that point, because it's like, you have to find joy every day, right? And if you're not finding joy, if you're just kind of holding on to the hope of the future, I think you should really reevaluate your situation. If you have children, it's really hard to be there for your child in the way that they need you to be if you're always at the hospital. Like, if you bring a child into this world, they need your full attention. Like, you're raising a soul on this planet. They need you. Me personally, if I ever have a child, I actually want to homeschool my children. So it's like, that in and of itself is enough to leave. Like, the fact that I'm passionate about being fully present in my child's life all the time. Like, I never want to leave my child, right? I don't want to send them off to a place where they can be brainwashed and taught false history. Okay, and now on to the next point. Modern medicine takes away personal responsibility. For example, if you're a diabetic, type 2 diabetic, not type 1, but if you're a type 2 diabetic, and you have your insulin or your diabetic medications, and you decide that, you know what, it's going to be okay for me to eat this cake and this ice cream because, you know what, I can take my drugs after and my blood sugar levels are going to be fine. That's irresponsible. Or if you are morbidly obese and instead of doing the work, you opt for surgery or pills to help you lose weight. It's like, I get that there's extreme circumstances, like I said, emergencies. I said modern medicine can be good for emergencies, right? But when it comes to, like I said, the chronic diseases like obesity, right? Diabetes, it's like you really have to take responsibility for your health. Like, you really should consider changing your diet and being proactive with your health and not relying on something outside of yourself, like your doctors or your healthcare team, to save you. Anytime we rely on something outside of ourselves, it's not a good thing. So I just wanted to make that point. So, at the white coat ceremony, we took the Hippocratic oath, right? We said we were going to do no harm to our patients. So I want to read some other Hippocrates. I want to read some Hippocrates quotes that I think is these are very important. Okay. So the first one: everyone has a doctor in him or her. We just have to help it in its work. Let thy food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. Another quote: illnesses do not come upon us out of the blue. They are developed from small daily sins against nature. Another one: the natural healing force within each of us is the greatest force in getting well. So hopefully after listening to those quotes, it tells you have to be the one in control of your health. You have the power. You should be your own doctor. You should not rely on these doctors, people outside of yourself. And the thing is like, your poor decisions affect other people, right? So it's like, if you're not taking care of yourself and you end up in the hospital because of decisions that you made, it's like other people are going to have to take care of you. And other people have to spend hours and hours and hours at the hospital trying to help you because of your poor decisions. And I had to just be direct and honest about that, right? Because I can slam the medical system, right, and say all these things, but I also have to acknowledge that patients, you also play an active role, myself included. Like, we all as humans have to be proactive about our health and take personal responsibility for our health. Because what if the weight loss surgery didn't exist? What if these drugs didn't exist, right? Like, what would you do then? You'd have no choice but to take care of yourself. So I just had to make that point. So, okay, that's it. So yeah, those are all the reasons. So overall, it just wasn't for me. And so ultimately, like I said, I was on my OB rotation, then I did pediatrics, and then I had a fall break. And after my fall break, I was to start my neuro rotation. And the morning of October 23rd, 2023, my beautiful, loving mother did pass away. And that broke my heart, of course. The worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. And another point, I'm inserting another clip I want to make is that if I'm being completely honest, I don't believe it was the cancer that killed my mother. I truly, truly believe it was the effects of the chemo. And she also had the radiation. It was just too much. You already have a sick person, right? Their body is already in a state of dis-ease, right? It's already in a state of imbalance. The goal would be to rebalance the body, right? Bring back harmony to the body. Those poisons that the hospital administered did not bring harmony and balance back to her body. It's like they took a toxic bomb and let it explode in her body. So it is my belief that my mother suffered from complications due to the hospital administered treatments that were given to her. And that is my personal opinion, because I know what I saw and I know what I witnessed. You don't take a sick person and abuse them more. You don't beat a body that's already broken. You have to treat it gently. And for the sake of completeness, my mom did get immunotherapy, and I was actually happy for her to get immunotherapy. I thought the immunotherapy was going to be more specific, not as like it's immunotherapy has a targeted receptor, right? So I was like, okay, this would be good. But the immunotherapy, all of that did was cause massive inflammation in her body, massive inflammation. And ultimately, all of these treatments, chemo, radiation, immunotherapy, none of it significantly affected her tumor. And it's like, if I get that she had a rare type of cancer, right? If you know that these things don't really work, why did you still give it to her? Oh, okay, right. I forgot. You got to make your money. Go on your vacations, right? Yeah, okay. I talked a lot about the chemo, and the immunotherapy wasn't really any better. Like, it just turns your immune system into like a battlefield. And my mom's body didn't need more war. She needed peace. I took another month off of school after my mom died. And then when I started back, I did an elective in maternal fetal medicine. Like I said, like I told you all before, I wanted to be an OBGYN, so it made sense to do an elective in my field of interest. Then after that, I had Christmas break for 2 weeks. And then after that, they put me in my surgical rotation, which was pretty crazy that they did that, because it's like your surgical rotation is notoriously known to be one of the most like brutal of all of the third-year rotations. And it's like my mom just died. But regardless, I pushed through 3 weeks. It was really hard. It was really, really hard. I remember I would stare out the window while being at the hospital, and I would look at the trees and the sky, and there would be this deep longing and honestly like a pain inside of me, right? An emotional pain. And it was this longing for a life I felt that I could never have, a life that was rooted in freedom and creativity. And I couldn't have that life because I chose this path, and this path meant that I would have to sacrifice a lot of that. It's like I'm choosing to live basically in the hospital. I'm choosing the hospital, the sterile, cold, lifeless walls of the hospital. And I just felt trapped. And ultimately, I actually ended up dropping my surgical rotation after 3 weeks. The day I dropped, my last day, I remember it was so early in the morning. It was like 5 a.m. And I was at the hospital, and I was staring at the computer, trying to look at my patient's overnight labs for rounds. And my brain wasn't processing anything at all. And I just felt this darkness just come over me. Like I literally couldn't focus. I was just staring at the screen. And I went outside of that unit and into the hallway, and I actually slumped down to the floor and just started crying. And one of the residents I had worked with before, she knew that my mom had just died. She happened to like walk by and she came and she gave me a hug, and that was really sweet. So I ended up dropping my surgical rotation. Then I had a few more weeks off, and then I started back with my internal medicine rotation. And I did 4 weeks of that. It wasn't as bad as surgery, but I remember I was on my GI. I was on GI, which is gastroenterology week. I had like 2 weeks of GI. And on my last day, I was walking in the hallway and my attending, he comes up to me and he's like, "What's wrong? Why are you walking like this? All like kind of slumped and whatnot." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean? I'm just here." And then I was like, "Well, my mom just died." And apparently he didn't know. Like, my school didn't tell him, which is kind of weird, I guess, but it's whatever. I guess they were just kind of keeping my business private, but that definitely is going to impact me as a medical student. Like, when it comes to evaluations, like if a student's parent just died, that might affect how they behave in the hospital. So it might be a good thing for your attending to know, right? Because they're going to be evaluating you, right? They're evaluating you. Anyways, after I told him my mom died, he was like, "Why didn't I know this?" And I just lost it, broke down. And he actually sent me home that day. And he was like, "You're going to be a great gynecologist," because he knew I wanted to go into OB. And he was like, "Just go home, rest. You need to take care of your mental health." So I went home, and then I ended up dropping the rotation. I couldn't bear the thought of going back into the hospital. And over the months, I was really struggling. I was like trying to decide, like, do I go back or do I just escape? Like, leaving medical school was such an incredibly difficult decision, because it's like I had worked my whole life basically to get into medical school. I worked so hard, right? I sacrificed so much time, money, right? And it's like, Danielle, you're just going to throw it all away? And then not to mention the pressure, right? It's the pressure from family, from society. I am a Black woman, right? And so there's that pressure from society where it's like, well, there's not many of us in the medical field. You got to keep going. You got to do it for the community. Your community needs you. We need more of you in the field. And it's like, okay. And then family, right? Like, of course, they were extremely disappointed. No matter how many times I explained myself and told them I'm not happy here, they still couldn't accept it, right? They couldn't bear the thought that I wasn't going to be a doctor, right? And at the end of the day, it's like I had to go against the grain, right? I had to shut all of that out. I had to shut out all of the noise, right? From society, from family, any other person. I had to shut all of that noise out, get rid of those expectations, right? And I had to listen to myself, my inner self. And it wasn't easy. I think too often we fall victim to the pressures of people outside of ourselves, like our family members in society. Like I'm saying, it's like we want to make them proud, or we have to prove something to them. And of course, there's a stigma. Med school dropout. Wow, what a failure you are. And it's like, actually, like, I am not a failure. I have courage and bravery to stand in my truth that I was not happy in medical school. And my mom's death, whether she died or not, it really wouldn't have changed, I think, the outcome. Because at the end of the day, I mean, if my mom was alive, I probably would have pushed through it and still been miserable, right? So my mom's death, in a way, it kind of gave me permission to set myself free without guilt or shame. So yeah, like I said, once I shut out all of that outside noise and I decided to stand in my truth and follow what brings me happiness and joy, that's when I knew. I was like, okay, this is the decision that I'm going to have to make. I literally felt like my soul was suffocating in the hospital. I remember I would be at the hospital and I would be thinking, how did I get here? Isn't that crazy? Like, you're in medical school, you're going to be a doctor, and you're sitting there thinking like, almost as if it's like a punishment. It felt like I was being punished. That's crazy. And you know what? If you see the thumbnail in my video, I put med school dropout, because guess what? I'm not ashamed. I'm posting this video. I'm not ashamed about it. I'm so proud of myself. I really am. I'm proud for standing in my power and being courageous, like I said, to follow my heart and align myself with the right path that is for me. I just realized I didn't have anything to prove to anyone. And I didn't have anything to prove to myself either. I didn't drop out of medical school because it was hard. I actually did very well in medical school. I dropped out because it wasn't in alignment with my soul. I was not happy. I was miserable in it. Particularly third year, I'm going to say, because I did say I enjoyed the first 2 years, but the third year, and seeing the residents, how they were miserable and some of the attendings were miserable. And it's like, everyone is so unhappy. I was like, I got to get out of here. And at the end of the day, when it comes to disappointing your family or society or whatever, and it's like, they're not the ones that have to get up at 4 a.m, go to the hospital, stay there for 12 hours a day, stuck, making sacrifices. They're not the ones that have to do that. So they can sit back and criticize and shame and do all these things, but they've never stepped foot in your shoes before. Unless they actually went through it, it's like, you don't know what it's like. This is my life. And I have full control over my life. So honestly, my soul was screaming, telling me to run. So it was either stay in a situation that suffocated my spirit, or break free and find whatever would bring my soul true joy, bliss, happiness. So after extensive reflection, contemplation, I decided to submit my letter of withdrawal to my school. And they received it well. And they wished me the best. And that was the end of my medical school journey. And that leads me to introducing my channel, Healing Her Sacred Light. And that's exactly what this channel is about. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I did want to go into obstetrics and gynecology. But like I've mentioned before, I don't agree with a lot of the things that are done in the field. And I just figured, I could still help women by spreading knowledge, information online through this channel, through this platform. And so I hope to build a community with other like-minded women who really want to tap into their divine feminine power, basically. I not only want to talk about, spiritual topics. I want to talk about how our wombs have been attacked by society, by our own selves, how we've attacked ourselves. I want to talk about science and health. I want to apply the knowledge that I have learned over the last few years. And I'm still learning, by the way. And just because I'm not in medical school and because I'm not going to be a MD doesn't mean that my capacity to learn has disappeared. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. A lot of the learning done in medical school is actually done at home. So I'm still learning. It's just I'm not paying a bunch of money to do it. You know what I mean? So I'm going to continue to learn, continue to understand herbal medicine, and I want to share that knowledge with you all on this channel, where we can really turn to nature to heal ourselves. And I want to do meditative talks. I want to do sound bowl healing. I just really want us women to awaken the divine feminine that has been dormant inside of us for so many years. And the divine feminine has been dormant on this planet, and it's time for her to rise again. And if you resonate with this message, and if you feel that calling inside of you too, please join me on this journey. I'm still healing myself. I'm not claiming to be some guru, some expert. I'm no professional. I'm just a soul here answering the call and following what I believe is my mission, which is to be a healer. I believe all women are the healers on this planet, and it's time that we rise again. So thank you all so much for tuning in and watching and listening to my story. Please like, share, and subscribe. And also in the comments, if you have a story similar to mine where you've had to change paths and go against what society or your family expected of you, I'd love to hear about it. Or even if you haven't actually made that move and you're contemplating it, please share. I would really love to hear about your stories as well. So, and as I mentioned earlier, my next video is going to be about obstetric violence and birth trauma. I think it's very important that we bring awareness to what is happening to many laboring women in these hospitals. Birth is a sacred process, and it should be honored as such. But unfortunately, in this day and age, it is not honored. So yeah. All right. Well, I'll see y'all in the next video.